Hi, this is Kelly Lovejoy from the Rutgers Teaching Assistant Project, here to give you a quick teaching tip about how to establish expectations for your classroom. It's really important to set policies for your students and communicate them clearly. In other words, you need to let students know what they will need to do to be successful in your class. There are a few really important policies or expectations that you can set and probably should set for every class. And those are attendance and participation, classroom behavior, and late work policies. So first, for attendance and participation, it's important for you to think ahead of time how much of your student's grade will depend on them being physically in your class. And then you can take it a step further and think about, well, if a student is tardy quite frequently, how much does that affect their ability to participate in your class? If you think about attendance and participation ahead of time, you can develop your own system and have it ready to communicate to your students. So for example, what if you decide every day in class is worth 5 points? So if someone is absent, they can't get any points. If they're tardy, maybe they can only get 3 points or 4 points. If they don't participate, maybe they can only get 2 points. Whatever you decide is fine, and it'll obviously depend on you, your teaching style, and your priorities in your class, but it's important to have a policy, to have something in place that you can communicate and share with your students. Regarding classroom behavior, what type of atmosphere do you want to create in your class? Is it a discussion class? Is it mostly a lecture? Do your students have to do a lot of group work? Are they going to be having debates? Are there guidelines or boundaries that you need to set regarding what type of commentary or opinions can be shared? Do you talk about controversial topics? Do you want students to raise their hand every time they want to say something? Is it okay if they speak out? Is it okay if they cut each other off? Any of those things that sort of dictate the behavior and the type of atmosphere and the type of communication patterns that will be in your class, those are dictated by you. You will set the tone, and a good way to do that is by creating a policy or at least a description of what you expect, what's acceptable and what's not acceptable behavior in your class. Finally, regarding late work, or maybe not late work, but what happens when things are done late, what happens when a student doesn't turn something in for 2 weeks, whether it's an assignment or a project? What if someone doesn't show up on the day of class when there's an exam? What if it's a midterm? What if it's a final exam? If you think about those types of scenarios ahead of time, again, similar to thinking about attendance and participation, how you deal with late work or student work in general will dictate a lot of the response that you get from students. I know from experience that if you don't say that there's a policy, if you say, well, you can turn something in whenever and you'll still get full credit, guess what? You'll receive a lot of late work. But if you communicate to your students very clearly, if I don't get it the day it's due, you automatically lose 10%, and a week later you'll lose another 10%, you get a really different response. So again, the idea is to think about things in advance and create policies just so that you can communicate your expectations to your students. Once you've established really clearly what students need to do, they'll have a better time or a better chance of being successful in your class, because you're basically providing the resources so that they know exactly what they need to do. What does an A look like? How many days can I be sick? How many days can I be late, for example? So one final idea, usually with regard to policies, we usually include these on a syllabus for a course, and I would suggest that when you can, you print out a syllabus to give it to your student, because that's your way of saying, look, this is important, I'm doing my part in communicating this information to you. And definitely, whether you can print a syllabus and provide a paper copy to your students or not, take time to talk about it in class. It's important that you very clearly articulate your policies and your expectations for your students, because if you don't, there's a gap in the information. So it's in your best interest as a teacher, as an instructor, whether you're a teaching assistant or not, just to be as clear and articulate as possible about what you expect, and that way your students have all the information they need that will help them to be successful. Thanks.